Hello, EXED 605 students. Welcome to the 605 course for the summer. The course is organized in 6 modules, one for each of the 6 weeks of the course, and it talks about how current issues and trends are affected by a number of different global factors that occur in our society, having to do with funding issues, with pressures from parents, legal matters, and basically the context of the society in which we live, and how all of those factors affect what becomes an issue in special education and what becomes a trend. So, as you can see, there are 6 modules. The first module is the social and societal context of special education. The second has got to do with funding as it relates to shaping issues and trends, and there is a very important document in that particular module that we'll be going over in a second orientation that'll be the basis for your final project assignment for this course, which is due the last week. Module 3 has got to do with legal issues, and there's a document in there that is a website called Rights Law, which is intended mostly for parents, but it's an excellent website, an excellent resource, and it's got a lot of links to a variety of legal issues related to special education. And then there's the What Works Clearinghouse, having to do with issues and trends as they relate to evidence-based practices. And then the last 2 modules, the 5th one having to do with how do issues become trends, and we'll be releasing some information for that module over the next couple of weeks. And then the last one has got to do with no introduction of new material, but rather your preparation for the final project, which I'll describe in the second orientation for the next module. So for this module, you'll see the first item is orientation to Module 1. So once you click on that, a very short PowerPoint appears, which you can see embedded in Canvas, and these are the items in the module. The article by Bronfenbrenner on ecological systems, which is a classic in the field. An article by David Berliner on the difficulties of doing educational research. It's often referred to as soft research, and he makes the point that educational research is really the hardest science of all. There's a graphic in the module that we're going to take a look at. It's based on Bronfenbrenner's article, and it's got the different levels of the different systems in his theory. I'm going to ask you to do something with that as an assignment. And the other assignment is a discussion post on the discussion board having to do with Education Week. In this particular module, there are 4 articles, very short articles from Education Week, which is a newsletter that addresses a variety of different topics in education, and the ones that we've selected are related to special education. There are 4, and you'll need to select 2 and provide a summary of the main idea of each of the articles, your own responses and reactions and opinions about it, and finally a post having to do with one of your classmates' responses and posts. And then the other question that I'm going to ask you to respond to in that post is, what is your reaction to the Berliner article that's in the module? So as we take a closer look at what's in the module, you'll see the Bronfenbrenner article. It's a PDF. It should download right into Canvas. There it is. And it goes over all of the different aspects of his theory, where he describes the microsystem, the exosystem, the mesosystem, and the macrosystem as different aspects of what happens around the life of an individual that affect the development of that individual. This is a seminal article in the field of education and individual development. The next article is the one by David Berliner, very short article that talks about how educational research is very difficult to do because everything is embedded in a context, and it's not like in medicine or in the hard sciences where you can isolate certain variables and do a very controlled study on those variables. In educational research, as in the psychological sciences, when we're working with people and people are our subjects, it's very difficult to separate out what are the factors that are important. And his article is very appropriate and very pertinent to the whole issue of evidence-based practices, because it's not easy to determine, because of the very fact that everything is embedded in a context, what works and what doesn't. And here is the ecological systems graphic that you're going to be completing, and you should be able to download it to a separate Word document. And it should come up. And there it is. So just needed a little time. When you click on Enable Editing, you'll see this colorful graphic with a child in the middle of it, looking at the world. And your task here is to identify 3 or 4 examples based on the Bronfenbrenner article of things that occur around the life of a child, around the life of a student, that impact the development of that child. For example, some of those things are the microsystem, the mesosystem, the exosystem, and the macrosystem. And he's pretty specific about some of the examples that are contained in each one of those. So just to give you one example, something that immediately surrounds the child and that affects their development would of course be the family. So the child's family would be an example of something that's a part of the child's microsystem. As you move further and further out in the circles, you end up with variables, factors that affect the child, but somewhat more remotely. For example, in the macrosystem, you would have things like societal values, you would have things like laws, and various other factors that are a part of the macrosystem and that ultimately do, even though indirectly, do impact on the development of the individual. So I gave you a couple of examples of things that you might include. Your task is to come up with at least 3 or 4 for each of the levels of the theory, and you do that by inserting a text box into each one of these circles and typing out a word or two of what your example is. So back to modules. The last item is Education Week, and aha, there we go. So the trick is to right-click on the URL and it opens it up. So this one is about the rise, the apparent rise in the use of assistive technology for students with disabilities in a mainstream inclusive setting. So if you choose that one, you can read about it and then summarize it, respond to it in your discussion post. So that concludes our orientation to Module 1. If you have any questions, please let me know.